looks like I'm wearing the same blue cardigan. I'm not. It's a different one.
Same for me. The green jumper.
It's a completely different one, and because that's the kind of guy I am. I've got lots of sky blue jumpers. My name is Tosca, and I'm joined on the sofa again by my estimable guests.
Mark Dempster.
Michael Emmett.
Paul Ferris.
Okay, and it is the Gritty Nitty podcast, and we're going to talk about the effects of something that affected us all. The effects of something that affected us all, kind of like that. The pandemic, and what that was, what it is, and what it meant to us sitting around the table, and clearly what it meant to everyone else out there in radio land, in podcast land, and YouTube, and wherever you get the message from us. I just like to kick it off in the fact that, when I first heard about a pandemic, I was going to a football match with a girl, right? And I like to think I'm a really open-minded bloke. And I was going to a football match with this girl, and she sort of said to me, "It's all a hoax, it's all this, it's all that," and blah, 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 blah. And it really kind of, it just put my back up. So I asked her to get out of my car. I said, "Look."
As you do.
I said, "Look."
So the M1.
It's 70 mile an hour, yeah.
And what it was more about that she had this concept of what it was, what it would be, how it would be. It was here because... And I'm always amazed by these people anyway, I've got to be really honest, which is they just think their way into this sort of situation.
Yeah, that's
she has
true.
a fault, and thinks that that's what it is.
Yeah.
She said it was made by the chemical companies.
Bill Gates.
All conspiracy, it's going to be here for like 5 minutes and blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. And my kind of attitude to it was, I don't know what it is. I've never heard of a pandemic before. I know what an endemic is, don't know what a pandemic is. You know what I mean? Let's see what this merry-go-round's about. And I remember a couple of days later, literally thinking that people were going to die. I was going to see people dying in the streets. Do you know what I mean? I remember driving around and people saying, 220 have died today and done this and done that. And, and coming, when I think about my initial impressions, my sense of it, my feelings around it, my unconscious sort of dialogue that goes on. What's a pandemic like? It reminds me of some sort of late 60s film starring Peter Cushing and Vincent Price. You know what I mean? That was what it was. But the stark reality was that it impinged on my civil liberties. It impinged on my relationships with people. It brought me to a place at certain times which was, I found, quite depressing and, and a real kind of sharp sense of what's my kind of role in the world and what am I really about, and how do you kind of reinvent yourself in a situation like this, and most importantly, what's important to me. Because it left me with a lot of time on my own, sort of pondering those sort of questions. And, I just want to open it up and throw it out to anyone else who wants to pick the thread up and what, they felt about it.
I'll jump in.
Okay,
I'll jump
go on,
in.
Paul.
Jump in there, Paul.
When people hear the word isolation, people like me that's had a criminal past has been technically held in isolation. Which is like for people who don't know where you get held in isolation, it's what they call a punishment block, or the segregation unit, or the hole, or whatever words they want to call it. That's an isolation where you're isolated on your own for a determined period of time. And the legal position on it is they can't keep you in a cell on isolation for any more than 28 days because there's an outside visiting committee that comes in to look at the well-being of most prisoners.
The ombudsman, isn't it?
It's like a prison ombudsman. You get a visiting committee, and for 28 days, people could imagine. And I've known people that have been arrested, maybe had a few drinks on a Friday night, sobered right up over the weekend, faced the reality in the Monday. What have we done? You know, it could be they're going back to prison, or they get that much of a fright, just lying in a police cell, not even a prison cell. So the isolation part of it, and then me personally, I was already self-isolating before anybody was isolated.
I get it.
Because my partner had left, the kids had left, I had personal issues in business, HMRC and a variety of other things. And where I was living was on an isolated farm anyway. We only ever got to see the farmers the next door, the postman, or sort of occasional rambler, but that was a whack. You never got to see anybody. So me personally, I thought I was well up for the isolation, well up for the reasoning behind the isolation, understanding why is it called COVID, why is it called a variety of a different. There was a lot of grey areas involved in it. So I was lucky enough to get my business sorted out, farm sold. That would have been on February 2019. And came down to visit in England, see a few friends, a few family. And then COVID kicked in. And it was on a situation that I got a panic. Normally I don't panic, but I panicked on the basis that I need to go and see my kids. But it was a conscious decision. If I go and do that, I might be carrying something. I'm giving it to kids, giving it to their mum, she's giving it to her mum and her dad. So there was a deliberate ploy regarding obeying what these rules were. And then understanding that certain people needed help. Sheila, as you know, elderly lady, 90 years of age. Right. 90 years of age, purely on the basis that she couldn't understand what COVID was. And she couldn't understand what isolation was. Right. And the first time I said to her, don't go out, give me a list for your shops, your groceries, what do you need? The first place I went was to an Asda. The queues were right on the car park. I said, I'll go to Tesco, the exact same. Sainsbury's, exact same. So I came back and explained to Auntie. She said, where's the groceries? I went, you won't believe the queues. I said, let it die down and I'll go back out. So I'd done it maybe 2 hours later. But this time I got a corner shop that I could get my tobacco at, a couple of cans of beer, and then go back up. So Auntie looks at the bag. Where's the rest of the groceries? I said, there's still queues on there. Oh, but you got yourself stuff. Right, so I ended up getting her ready, got her gloves, got her mask on. And as soon as we hit the first queue, she reverted back to Second World War. Wow. How people at that...
Rations.
There was never that big a queue.
No, right.
She's trying to work out what is the difference between rationing and these sort of things. And she went back into a bit with regards to, it was a threat, at that time it was a threat to get bombed with the enemy, Germany. This was an unknown threat that she couldn't understand why she's wearing a mask. But there was a lot of people that took it to extremes. So I've stopped in the car park and people were wearing masks. And I know I'm laughing, I shouldn't laugh at this one, right? But this crackpot just came right past me, surfing on a trolley. Shouting, out the road, out the road. He's got the big World War II gas mask on. And I thought, that's a bit extreme. He's actually frightening people. And then you had other people with a variety of different masks in and out of shops, fucking balaclavas. And for a criminal point of view, we'd be looking back and going, wish they had COVID 20 years ago. You know, nobody ever get pulled in a car, they're driving smothered up.
Aye.
I mean, no long before it, if you had ended in the car with a balaclava, you'd get nicked. But the fear of the COVID was something which I made a conscious decision. Family's been split. Husband, wives have been split. Sons, daughters, partners, on the basis, nah, it's a hoax. And the other ones are saying, no, we've been told to get these jabs. Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and then your booster later on down the line. So you had rebellious people, even one of my sons, trying to get him back into our bubble.
Right.
And one of the requirements was he had to have had his second COVID jab. Because he's got his first one yet, he became an anti-vaxxer.
Yeah.
This is all, and people have got a right to make their opinions heard, especially in personal things. Do you want to wear a mask? You don't.
Yeah.
Do you want to die or do you want to survive? That's the there was no grey area. It was either you're going to die or you're going to live. So the whole point of getting the jabs, and I'm not saying I'm a hypochondriac, but I'll look at situations and say it's not been tested in humans, not been tested in animals, but because I've been involved with doctors and nurses and medical professionals in the past treating me in hospitals for my skin, I trusted them on the basis and saying, if they're saying I need to get this done, I need to get it done. Right. So there was a position in which I couldn't get back to Scotland to see my kids. There was travel restrictions. You could have went, but the whole point about it is you taking a risk and a contaminant and going somewhere else. Sad stories about people going to visit, look through windows, and that to me was like closed visits in prison. You know, your family's up, you touch the glass, that's your whack, it's heartbreaking, it's a sore one. So for these people who've never experienced anything like that, it must have been a severe impact on mental health issues.
No, very much so.
Right, so the mental health issues, then you had a surge on social media, because everybody's housebound anyway. Twitter kicked off, YouTube kicked off, they already were kicked off anyway. But the information regards to COVID and things like that was purely based on what your family was telling you. People were lucky enough to have maybe medical experts that was working in hospitals. But at the end of the day, it boiled down to a personal choice. Yeah. You're either going to take the jab or you ain't going to take the jab. And there was a few people that had been contacting me on social media about mental health issues, how they've benefited. Going and studying that, being a bit more aware.
Absolutely.
Most people were kind of misguided with news outlets, BBC, Sky News. Who controls that? Who controls the information? The biggest conspiracy theorist theory and the image that I first saw was a dead bat and a bowl of soup. They're like lying there and you'd think, who wants to eat that anyway? And they wonder why they get a disease. So you're looking at that thinking, they're fucking nuts. But it's a propaganda. Whether it was a bat and a bowl of soup that caused this is highly unlikely, right? So the next one is the people look at it consciously and say, what is the other choice? The other choice is the Chinese have messed up in a lab. They've failed to take on board the incubation level before it goes out, because it was all new. Nobody knew exactly what it was. And then you get the other people who looked upon the situation and said, nah, it's God. God's the
purging the earth.
Purging the flock. Right.
5G
Right. Well, the 5G was another one, and there was situations in Scotland that people were putting £1,000 reward on taking a 5G tower done. So there was few people out with the still saws pulling petrol on it. And there's a few grand spent, but the misguided nature it was, I don't think there was enough information at the start. I don't even think the people who were in charge knew anything about it. They were winging it. They were winging it. Winging it on a stage where 3 months isolation, and then 2 households, 1 household, furlough, keep people off of work. People have never experienced anything like that. Will suffer.
No.
Still continuously suffer. This is where they've went flip side and went, don't need to go to work. Off licence. 2 litre of that, 3 litres of this. Can you get us a bit of that? Can you get us a bit of that? So all of a sudden they're in an environment that they're losing their identity. And you've got other people who's in a working environment that'd rather work from home now anyway than go back there. So before the pandemic you had brilliant postcodes for businesses. whether it's a serviced office or whatever it is. Now you've got people that are not even interested in paying extreme rental value for offices. So, so what you've got, what's going to happen here? Are they going to put them into social affordable housing, give them a chance to have an office block that's been converted into commercial to residential? But the biggest aspect to the COVID is how we've all changed. Everybody's changed.
Yeah, very much.
A bit more.
Worldly, globally. Yeah,
But when you think about even before COVID, you look back and go, Chinese and Japanese did have something. They did have face masks. It was for the smog.
Yeah.
So when you've got a high degree of sanitising, even your own hands now. I was doing it on the farm anyway before anything else came out. So for me to put hand sanitiser, it wasn't a leap, I'd imagine it. Other people were doing it. And then I got into the masks, kind of masks, and just been accommodating to, this is the rules, this is what you've got to do. But there was a rebellious nature.
Aye, of course.
And although I'm up for people viewing their own words and things like that, but
Sorry? Right, okay.
but when they go to like demonstrations in Parliament Square and right throughout the UK, it was a bit serious. You know, people that are claiming they're no professionals, they're no anything other than, but they were scaremongering. But you always had that. There wasn't a two-dimensional side. There wasn't just a case of people that were for it or people who was against it. It was a big middle ground, a grey area. People saying, "Who's right here?" And I found myself taking that gamble because in order for me to survive in a social bubble, the elders who I was with already had the jabs. I don't feel it was any pressure on me because I'd done the right thing. And what I learned and what my opinion was, 50% saying to me, you're going to die. Another 50% saying you're going to die. And it's how you're going to die. If you die with taking a substance that's man-made to combat another one, then that's a risk you've took. If you don't take it, there's another risk. So either way, something fatal was going to stop my existence for getting from me back into business, back seeing my family and just having a normal conversation. So it kind of affected a lot of people who were strong-minded, affected a lot of businesses. And there will be ramifications for it because whoever's identified as being involved in this, it's just absolute nuts. But when you've got professionals, that even high-level doctors and other medical experts that are saying, I'm not taking the jab, then you've got to question yourself. But the whole basis it boils on, what did you do for yourselves? What were you happy with? Did you reject it? Did you accept it or move on?
Well, I think I came from the point of, you know, and I can remember just being up the road here recently, and you've got all these kind of anti-vaxxers, right? And they're all flying about in the street and all that. And my kind of attitude was that, you know, let's say we all decided not to take the vaccine. Everyone in the country said, we're not going to be told by the government on our civil liberties. We just have, it would just be total chaos. People would be dying in the street. Do you know what I mean? Because we decided that my right to choose, right, is more important, right? So, and my sense of it was that I did whatever I did, yeah? I don't need to shout and scream about it. Do you know what I mean? It's not a political dint for me. Do you know what I mean? But, I took the precautions which I thought were best for my family and kind of, you know, and lived it that way. But the idea, what irritated me was this idea of right and wrong. Yeah? And the idea that people that I knew, that I liked, getting on the phone to me, telling me what I should do. And have you read this? And have you know,
and that's
and you know, like for one, you know, I'm a person of independent mind and thought. You know, and I can kind of make decisions myself. And if you need to be that vociferous about your point of view, you need to have a look at that. You know what I mean? And it's not as if I said that to people, but people literally ringing me up, you know, at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, saying you should do this and blah blah, and I've read this, and it showed me a side of people, that I wasn't really prepared for. If I'm honest, in some certain situations, showed me, it's like, really? You know, and it took a lot of my muster not to kind of
I know.
to judge him because of that, to kind of like spin out of that and go, you know what? It's a bit like living in a place like America, right? Yeah. I kind of tend to think of it like this, you know, and Steve, you know, our technician and partner in Grit and Nitty, he kind of would understand this as well. America's a great place if you take the politics out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah? If you take the politics out of it, get on, you know, some people can't do that. Some people, for where they live their life, it's all about the politics. But for me, it's like, you know what? I ain't come here for that. Do you know what I mean? I've come here to do what I've got to do. And I think that, you know, what happened with the pandemic, it got really political.
Yeah.
But
none
to a point,
well, none of us. I mean, look, when it all started, I mean, at the beginning, I was like, this is a week, or I was saying it's a couple of days, and then that's it. We never suspected it's going to go on for 2 years. And the civil liberties is a massive that people start saying you've got to take it or you don't take it, or you know, like, and people, and I think that creates a split. I think some people, like you said, Paul, some people used it as a way to cut. Some people were like, their addictions just went crazy, right? And we don't even see the ramifications of that yet. Mental health, suicide, poverty, all that stuff, right? How it cascades. But then you've got also some people using it as a detox. Some people going, well, I'm banged up really for 24, you know, like 23 or 24 hours a day. But then the bigger thing it really annoyed. For me personally, what really got me about the whole thing is the pharmaceutical companies that made a fortune, and still do, the governments, right, throughout the world. I mean, I'm not talking just Britain, I'm talking about globally, where so these big pharma were making a fortune on the vaccines, and there was no regulation, this is a pandemic, this is like life or death, but yet, just round the corner here, we've got a clinic that charges £130 at the beginning, £130 for a PCR test. So the government were not interfering, we're just letting the private enterprise make a fortune from it, right? And I thought there was no regulation in that. So there was all these different aspects of it that I thought, that's just corrupt, right? That's just corrupt. Somebody's getting some real backhanders, there's some money getting moved around the system. But yet at the same time, you've got all these industries that are like closing down, but certain industries really blooming from it, right? And it's hard not to go into some conspiracy theory around that stuff. Yeah. But I kept coming back out that and going, well, no, I don't think it's organised. It can't be organised in that way, like some big Illuminati thing that's all, and Gates is involved in this.
The only way I went into the conspiracy theory was analyse the whole lot, and there was a flaw missing for the conspiracy. The pandemic was globally.
Yeah.
And before the pandemic, you never had a global agreement with other countries.
Yeah.
So that to me,
on that, I think it just proves. Sorry, have you finished, brother?
Sorry, Mark.
Go on. No, go on.
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. Yeah. If I cough, it's because I've had an operation on my nose and it falls
you get
down
COVID.
the back of my throat. I thought I'd put that out there. If I cuff my nose, it's because I haven't got a tissue with me. But so for me, I quite like the idea of it at first because it felt like a bit Christmassy, being pugged up, the Nick thing, the eating on. And then I remember coming downstairs to go to the shop, and across the road where I was living, that there was a halfway house at this particular place, and they were sort of, it wasn't sort of organised in there. It was going in and out. People we know have drug addictions. No judgment here, but it was stuck in a very prestige streets. Yeah, and so an ambulance pulled up there. Yeah, so I'm walking down the stairs, and they're bringing this guy out, and he's got COVID. Yeah. And it was like, oh my God, it was like war zone.
Yeah.
And he was 100 yards away from me. Where's the mask? Hold up, where's the mask? No, don't frighten me. So that was my first experience of it. Then I had a couple of friends die. Yeah. Sadly, one of them was a 50-year-old boy. Well, he's not dead actually, this guy. but he was in that ICU for 40 days, come out, had a stroke, and he's now, hello, and he don't recognise his kids, or he doesn't recognise life, and he had everything that life suggests. He had a lovely family, a beautiful restaurant up in Banstead, and he had everything what the world suggests that we should have, but this showed him no favours. Now, whatever that was, whether it was COVID or something that wasn't working right in his system, it exaggerated that in its weakness, and he had strokes, and he's now in trouble. A couple of friends I know, acquaintances, passed away. Yeah. So that was that was early days for me. And I thought, because where we're from, and we're all from the same place here, we're from the streets, so we have a sense of survival, right? Yeah. But you can't see the enemy, yeah? So all of a sudden I overextended my authority on my children. You can't do this. You can't do that. You've got... A mate of mine was involved with the masks. That was all corrupt. The government, absolutely, I don't care who listened to this, what they was doing from America to here was massive, especially in certain places. Yeah. So we tried to... Oh, there's a chance to earn a few quid here. We had all the stock. Another story. It crashed. But at the end of the day, the monetary side of it, things, no matter where we are, everyone in the Second World War, they were selling chocolates and linen and snout, all black market stuff. And we'd be naive to think the pharmaceutical people don't just use a pandemic to take advantage of this situation. They're gangsters, without a doubt. Now, I have a small share in a pharmaceutical company, which hasn't been, that's another story. But one of the things that I heard from this scientist, and it was around the HIV situation. Every time they got near it, and this is laymanly, I'm not talking as a scientist, and if I'm wrong, that it changed its DNA or changed its whatever it changed, and they find it hard to catch. So we're talking about something that's bright and intelligent. It must be, and I think this lent itself to be the same, So as they get near it, it's changing it. So that's why I believe it's diluted. I think the vaccines, whether they're right or wrong, has increased the immune system, and now all of a sudden it's going away. But it's definitely, in my opinion, crooked, and it's not conspiracy for me. But the human condition takes advantage of wars. In retrospect, this was a war. Whether it's China and America, who cares? But what it makes me realise is how small this world is. That one person, whether they was one person, who left that place in China, the whole world caught it, or the whole world was under pressure with it. So whatever that means, all of it means, I just think it's another sort of, it's lost top spot now, isn't it, COVID? Now we've got the war going on. So it's information, it's all things like that. But on a personal note, I got quite frightened, I wasn't ready to die. I didn't have the attitude, well, if it was my time. I weren't, there's things I've got to do. And that fear came into me. And I'll tell you a funny story, what happened to me after about 2-3 weeks of it, sort of everyone was in lockdown. There's an old face, a friend of my dad's, who lives up at the top of Putney. You know it is, I call him John, So he can't go out the house, he's 89, he's struggling with some bits and pieces. Will I bring some food up? I said, absolutely. So I'll get on the bus outside Chelsea and Westminster Hospital, and it's going up to Putney. Full team. There's no one on the bus but me. No one on the bus, and I don't even think they've covered the bus thing yet because they wasn't. So there's an African lady, and I'm not against Africans or anything like that. Gets on the bus. The bus is empty. She sits next to me. And the first thing I said, piss off, my grandchildren. No. You, however, she said, you haven't, I had a scarf around me neck. You haven't got a mask on. You should be arrested. I said, it doesn't matter whether I've got a mask on or not. I've got my scarf ballied up, right? You ain't getting near me. But it's nothing to do with you. Do you mind moving? No, I need to be by the door. I said, well, do you mind moving? The bus has pulled up. He said, if you don't stop, we're going to call the police, right? So I say, leave it to me. I'll call the police. So I picked my phone up, right, and she's there, and I ain't on the phone to the police. I never phoned the police in my life, Hello, mate. I got through within seconds, Hello, mate, there's a lady on the bus here. I've got my scarf on. She went, give me the phone. I said, no, you can't have the phone. He's asked where you're from. And what was funny, she jumped off the bus, but left her strawberries behind. They was perfect. So I got the I give them to John. I got the strawberries, and as we drove past her on the bus, I banged on the window. I went, lovely, got her strawberries. She was living. So, but I was so frightened that she sat next to me. So whatever that means, I mean, I've been fortunate. I don't mean to tempt fate, but I seem to have kept away from it. I've been in a car with someone who had it. I went to the football, 85,000 people there. But if I go into the fear factor, we as humans, we're creatures of habit. Yeah. So I have to remind myself, right, what my expectations are. If I want to go on the tube, do I believe it still exists? Do I believe it can kill me? Or do I take safety precautions? Yeah. So I have to be mindful of looking after myself.
Take responsibility.
Yeah. In one, Tosca. Yeah. But I was worried about my children and my grandchildren. But, today it just seems to think that we're living with it and we've got accustomed to it and what's going on. But it's corrupt, I think. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I want to finish this last thing. What I realised in this pandemic, that all our governments are puppets. Yeah. It made me realise that the authority that says to me, you go to prison, they're worse than me. Yeah, or worse than all of us. It's all corrupt, I believe. I don't think they've got the power of bees. I think it's controlled by the echelons up here, whoever that may be. And I think we're pawns in a game, yeah? And I think we either have to accept it or whatever we do. But I am not governed by... I've always been a rebel without a cause, yeah? So I like to do it my way. Whether it's the right way or wrong way, it's my way. But my love and protection is over my children, and I can't control this, yeah? So I'm quite prayerful about it, but it's beginning to just leave the importance of my life, and hopefully we can all get back on with life.
Yeah, I heard that woman died. She got off the bus. She had COVID.
I mean, bless that woman. But thanks for the strawberries.
It's a funny situation. When I got it, like, I had no... When it was all happening at the beginning, I was like, it's a flu, man. And I thought, this was my thinking for quite a while, was like, it's a flu. It's like, I've overdosed countless times. I've had this happen to me. This is nothing, right? So this was my thinking. But then when I got it, I woke up at 2 a.m.
Was you frightened?
Yeah, man. I woke up at 2 a.m. and I thought, I'm not going to be able to breathe. And then it hit me. I thought, shit, this could be it. And I got that moment of like, and it passed, and I was okay. But I gave it to my friend. What happened? I didn't know. Before that, I went. My friend who I seen this morning, Chip. I went down to see him, and I got into a lift with him. I didn't know I had it at the time, and then when I got diagnosed, I had it when I done the test. I felt this sense of response. I thought, and I phoned up Chip, and I felt so much shame around. And he was 70. He's 74 now, so he was 73 then. And I said to him right away, I says, look, Chip, I think I've gave you COVID. And then every day I was checking up on him because I was like, paranoid that something, he was going to die. But I never knew that, mate. I had a lot of friends that got COVID, but
had you had the vaccine when you got those?
Aye, I'd had, yeah. So this is the thing about it. I'd had and this is the thing about the whole thing about when people go, you should get the vaccine, you've got to get the vaccine. And yet, I know loads of people got it and had the vaccine.
Well, it don't prevent you getting it.
No, exactly. Yeah. So, but it's personal choice. Ultimately, it comes down to personal choice, isn't it? But we've never seen anything like. I mean, really.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
This is a massive thing.
I know, a couple of people that died. And Stephen Lavinia, Bobby and Steve's zoo experience. He's still suffering from it now.
Yeah. Billy was the only one.
Yeah, Billy. Billy.
There's loads of people that I know that are deeply affected by it, and it's kind of okay. So you know, if we move that forward,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, we're not in a pandemic now, and we can talk about, you know, what lessons have you learned personally from your involvement in a pandemic, which, you know, as both Paul and Michael have kind of established, this is a worldwide thing. And Paul said, you know, one of you said one person had it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Could have been.
Yeah.
Could have been. It's the unknowns.
Yeah.
It's gone through the pandemic, coming to an end. And
'Cause
I
I
think
remember
a
there
lot
was
of people value that they're still alive.
Do you mind me asking, have you been vaccinated?
Yeah, I've had the first dose, second dose, and the booster.
And how did you feel about it? Was it because you wanted to get it?
No, it was one of these situations where I'm in an environment that the elder people
Yeah,
have got
right.
it. I can't be a carrier. Can't go and see the kids. Need to get on with it.
Yeah, for sure.
When I got the first job, I was listening to other people's symptoms. Fatigue, feels like I'll mention this one because it's quite funny since these are looking at substance abuse and alcoholism. I actually heard somebody giving a girl advice on what to expect when she has the job, and said to her, it's a bit like having a bad hangover. And she replied, she doesn't drink. How bad's a bad hangover? Yeah. So I got other things for other people, sore heads. But when I genuinely got up and went back to the farm, I felt as though it was I think they gave me the wrong job. It was like a vitamin boost. I normally go for a walk. I'd done about 3 times the amount of walking. Never felt exhausted.
You was flying.
Yeah, flying. And Kim was asking about, how do you feel? I went, I feel so they gave me the wrong thing. Like, I don't know if it was to do with relief, because everybody else has had it. I've been kind of dodging this thing, a potentially lethal disease that they're no cure for. So the streetwiseness comes into it, the self-precautions come into it, and it's who you meet, and it's that distance sort of thing. But I still don't think it's over. It's over to an extent. It's gone. We're safer, but we're no safe.
Diluted.
But anybody who's had the jabs, whether it's done any benefit for them, the second jab that I got wasn't anywhere near as fucking like a turbo boost. The first one was. I never get any symptoms, but what I have noticed, I always used to get some forms of flu, either at November, January.
Yeah, me too.
I've not had the flu in 3 years.
No, I've not had the flu. Yeah.
Aye. Do they call that influenza? You do sneeze because of the pollen and different seasonal changes, but the biggest impact to take out of the pandemic is to remember what we've went through, to understand what the kids have went through, the elderly people, because we're in kind of a quirky age group where we've seen what happens to the older people, and it latches on to existing medical conditions that accelerates the virus. And then when you look at the younger kids that I've got as well, that are still having their immune systems been building up, it's still a fear. And there's never one single professional or academic or anybody has shown any confidence in what they're doing. It's so statistics say this certain part of the population, this is what. And strangely enough, when COVID kicked off, there was 4 different strains. One that, strangely enough, was in Italy and Russia was the same. There was one in the Philippines and Taiwan that are the same but different for the ones in Italy and Russia. And then the ones that you had the signature through the DNA in the UK and America was totally different. So you had 4 different strains. Whether they mutated, that's the word that you're looking for, Michael, when it changes, when it mutated into a hybrid, you're saying they're trying to catch it and then it escapes. It mutates. And then you had the South African variant, the Indian variant. So the virus...
And the Delta.
The virus has shown, irrespective of whether you want to accept it or not, it can adapt and change.
Absolutely.
But again, another key point you've mentioned, is it diluted?
Yeah.
Is it diluted enough where people who won't know the incubation, if they have got, it may last 4 years, may last 2 years, it's a relatively new and unknown pandemic. But the biggest lesson for me is always about life or death. If you don't do it, you're going to die. If you do it, you might die.
Yeah.
So to me, it's a personal choice, but also respect the people who never took it.
Yeah.
Maybe not respect what their views are, but also think myself lucky that I'm not in mourning for any family member.
Okay, yeah, there's a positive.
So there's a big positive about that regards to other people who never get the chance to see either their mum and their dad or
that was
their
a lot
elderly.
tragic,
There's a loads of tragedy in it, but it brings back resentment towards government, medical
Just
advice.
for me too.
There's still a lot of questions to get answered, but from a personal point of view, I've valued life and death for many, many years, but that was a close call for me personally.
You know, I get
When it
it.
first came out, I thought, I ain't going to get to see the kids.
Yeah.
I ain't going to get to see the kids. Then lockdown, I don't fancy getting up because I don't think...
Aye.
People think I'm strong and different. I don't think I'd have had the opportunity to have stayed in a level mindset, going to visit my kids and talking through a glass window.
Yeah.
No chance of it. No chance of it.
No, a lot of
So you
tragic,
look, and then you look for excuses, two households, 3 households, but you guys are all expert, even Steve that's doing the recording. We've all had personal things that we can hold on to and say, we were lucky, not just fortunate, we were very, very lucky. Whether it's we're fortunate to sit here having a discussion about it just now, was in direct contrast to taking situations, taking risks. Do you take the vaccine? Do you know? Do you wear a mask? Do you know? There's a lot of personal stuff in it. And I think what people go to decide on is there is a pandemic, whether who's right or who's wrong. People have survived that, but there's still people want to carry on the conspiracy.
See, I was in Austria a couple of weeks ago in Vienna, and you couldn't go into a restaurant. I couldn't go into a restaurant or anywhere unless I had the QR codes. So it became civil liberty that I just thought, and it was, and I guess when it first started, I was still travelling a lot. What was bizarre, right, was not quite beside the mic. What was bizarre when it was surreal. I was coming into Harley Street on the motorbike most days, and going through London when there was no one
Yeah,
around.
no, it was surreal.
It was surreal. It was like it just took a science fiction movie, wasn't it?
that's
It's
right.
like the day after tomorrow. It's like,
No,
and,
that's true, yeah.
and I was coming through, and I thought, this is like weird. You know, like your impression.
Yeah.
Right in that moment, my impression is like London's empty. I've
Good point,
never
that,
seen
Great
London
though, wasn't
empty.
it?
Aye, it was great. No, and I'd be going through Trafalgar Square, going round Trafalgar Square, and there'd be like just the pigeons and a couple of people, maybe if you're lucky. And then I'd come up here, I'd see a client, I'd sit with them like 3 meters apart with the window open, and and it was just that whole thing was a surreal
Yeah,
experience.
no,
It was
very
like
much so. Yeah, that was true.
So
I just carried on. I was flying all over the place.
My
At the same
question-
time and what
my
was
question's for it,
Aye.
right? Do you think, in hindsight, it's a wonderful thing, right? Do you think the government handled it the right way?
I think they didn't have a clue. I think what they'd done is
Okay, so what they did, do you think it was the right thing that they
I
did?
do today, because we're out there now.
Yeah.
I think we're front runners as well, aren't we? Or up there with them, and it seems to be working.
Yeah.
So they must have done something right. Whether it was the government or Boris, whoever it was, whatever's been implemented here.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll only take 30 seconds.
No.
When he was saying it was empty, my girlfriend, she likes to take photographs. So we was getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning if she stayed, and going into London from about 3 o'clock till 7 o'clock in the morning, and it was really weird, but also very enjoyable.
Aye.
Like time stood still, there was no one about, and it was like, and I really liked it. But did we do it right? I think we're all right. I think we're on the road.
What was interesting about it? I was going through these airports, right? And what I thought was funny is like how they joined up. Like what I noticed is the airline company would be like would be saying. So the airport would have gaps in between, a seat here, a seat there, and a gap in between, right? And then you got on the airline, and the airline you were stuck together. So that you could see what it highlighted to me was the greed of the organisers. That they weren't caring whether or not you got COVID or not. They just wanted to fill that plane So money became the important. As always, money was the most
Yeah,
important.
what I couldn't work out about travel,
Aye.
and and there are a couple of things that I'm struggling with around it all. So, the pandemic has kind of rendered cash irrelevant. Yeah, that's out the window.
It's
now.
out the window now, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's
No,
kind of
that's
like
true, yeah,
you
So
everything.
that's convenient. It's convenient, isn't
And
it?
so
for
what that
tracking.
does is, it traces everyone.
Aye, traces of it. Aye.
Where they've spent
Aye.
it, what they've done with it,
Aye.
and the rest of it.
Yeah, that
and
is true.
and then what you have with that is you have this passenger locator.
Aye, possibly look at your phone. Aye. So we're all, yeah.
Which I'm thinking to myself, well, so I've been to Europe during the pandemic. I've been to America a few times during the pandemic, and I thought this time I'm coming back. There'll be no, came back last week. There'll be no passenger locator, and there's still
is. There still is. I
There's
came
still
back to it.
There's still
a
passenger
locator.
locator, which
Aye.
basically you're telling them where you're gonna be.
Aye, that's
Yeah,
right.
and there's part of me that thinks,
Why are we still doing this?
Yeah, and there's
Yeah.
there's part of me that thinks I want to put a moody in, right? Yeah.
Aye, yeah.
But once you do that, once you start being dishonest in that way,
Aye.
they have a reason to come around and collar you and ask you. I mean, why would you do that? You know what I mean?
yeah.
What's going on here? You know what I mean? And there can be some sort of repercussion for it. So I suppose that
The ones that advanced that technology were the same government agencies that wanted everybody in the UK to have an ID card. Then you had the civil liberties kicking off about it ain't going to happen. Now what you've got, smartphones, your credit card details are on it. It's a godsend to any security service to know exactly where you are. Passenger locators is just another layer. They already know where you are anyway.
Aye.
The minute, just imagine for a moment, right? You
Aye.
go to the nearest Apple shop,
Yeah.
right? You buy a phone. There's no SIM in it. There's an IMEI number on the SIM.
right, yeah.
There's also an IMEI number on the phone in itself. The minute you put your SIM card on the phone, the SIM card talks to the repeater mast.
Aye.
The phone also talks to the repeater mast. And the two of them link together to give you a signal on your phone. Now that device there, as you've never used it, you've never done nothing to it. If you're on a subject matter that they know within a certain area, you've pinged a new phone, or get information that you phoned somebody that's already got a phone, they got a tracker on it, they'll send an innocuous text message. Ding. See the minute you open that up, there's software already in your phone.
That's true. Yeah,
It's called the Trojan.
yeah.
It just opens it all up into your phone. And how they developed that was there was a lot of stuff in America. I'm not going off slightly off topic, it's Tosca, but what they had in America.
What are they called nodes?
Uh,
Anyway, go on.
so what nodes for the?
Well, the information pack.
No, the information facts comes right off the repeater mass. They can tell you your exact location. The Americans developed it up further because there was what they could get is X marks the spot. Well, but where X marks the spot, it was maybe 25 stories high.
Yeah.
They built an altimeter into the phone to tell them exactly what height they're up, what level they're up. The technical proficiency that's in most smartphones just now is a godsend because of the request through COVID, passenger locator, tracing,
Track trace, yeah.
track and trace. So what people have done is gave up that willingly,
Yeah.
and what you
From
said
fear.
is that process, the track and trace and passenger locate, is no longer rescinded because it's there, and it'll be there for a long time. And it's to do with freedom of movement.
I resent it.
They'll
Big
give you
time.
freedom.
But interestingly enough,
resent it, aye.
I think to myself that if you're not at it, it doesn't matter.
Do you know
Aye,
what? That's the key.
Aye.
That's
yeah.
That's the key.
But I think, so I think that's.
Are
the
you
thing,
at
would
it then, Mark?
No. Only slightly, guys.
But you've also got the other option. The other option is don't have a smartphone.
Yeah.
I put one out on an interview with James English because I didn't want a smartphone at the time. Just wanted to phone, wanted to reply, and the comments on it was, he's supposed to be legit after 20 years. He's still got a burner phone. And I thought,
Yeah.
I had about £5 grand's worth of phones on this farm. None of them would work. Bought one out of Asda for a tenner, Virgin. We've got 4 bars.
Yeah.
So the technology, the benefits for the security service during the pandemic is collecting and harvesting all that information. Where it was nearly going was the ones that were refusing to take the vaccines if they had a vehicle. Bump, the ANPR, they'd have cancelled your insurance because you're a threat to be on the street in the first place. It was going really hard.
Yeah.
The QR codes to get in and out of pubs, you could borrow it off of people. People were printing them off. There was a massive flaw in it. But as far as intelligence gathering, that was like Christmas, New Year, and rolled up every day.
Yeah,
was
so
Christmas,
it's
New
like
Year.
some people I know, I ended up in a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they're telling me that they had dodgy COVID passes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the dodgy COVID pass. But you can't, at the end of the day, who wants to get caught with a dodgy COVID
But I
pass?
done one. I got mine go for NHS. Only lasts for 48 hours. So that QR code changes every 48 hours.
Yeah, but you just refresh it in your phone.
Yeah.
You just refresh it in your phone. But the fact is, who wants to get caught with a
Dodgy COVID, aye.
they'll throw the book at you, wouldn't they?
Oh, I don't know. What happens?
Well,
Tell me
if
what
Well,
happens.
yeah, but
When
but-
you're going
but-
through Tosca, you've got a club, or you've got a bar, you've got a restaurant, right? And you operate your guys on the door, or even if you're on the door. And the first request is you get a QR code. There it's there. It's your job to check that because it should be an NHS downloader and reader that will establish what that is through their own database. But it's your job to, you're the owner of the place, are you going to slit them in? They want to spend the money. And do they look the part? Do they look as though they've got it? Does it in? Masks are kind of... I still wear a mask.
Yeah, I sometimes do.
Still wear a mask. So there's traits that you're going to take off this, but I still can't get back to the government
I think there's
agency.
a control in it, like you say.
There is.
They know everything we
There
do.
is.
But they've known that for a long time. They've just made it apparent now.
Well, the thing with money is you go into places now that don't take cash.
I don't take a lot of places don't take cash. I mean, it's true.
You know, on your passport, you know that little chip on your passport?
Aye.
Biometrics.
That tells you every seat that you've sat on every journey that you've had. So when they do that with your passport, everything about you comes up anyway. Yeah. All right, they might not have your credit card details on it, but they can get that from when you buy your flight. That's why they say the same credit card for the flight. But that little thing on your phone when they flick it through is it's seat that you've been on, terrorism, whatever they do it for. But so all the information's been there for many years, but they've got rid of Reddys. Which is a shame.
Well,
absolutely.
Listen, I had someone the other day who literally said to me, "Can you go and change some money in a jug in a bank for me?" He said, "Because I've got all this money around me and I can't spend it." But not only that, he'd had it for so long that it's all plastic notes now and all that, and he was thinking, how the hell am I going to kind of get rid of it? And what he did is he put them in, you know, like the Barker's got the machine that counts it.
Yeah.
It still counts it. It still counts
No,
the
that's
old
right, yeah.
as a schneid.
Yeah.
Still counts the schneid scores and that.
Yeah.
So he got out of it. But he had like,
Yeah,
you know, 10 grand tucked
Yeah,
up in.
yeah.
The interesting thing about it is his first fault was that he'd lost the money.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That somehow or another, because he had this paper money, it was, you know, and he'd have to do some sort of deal to get his paper money, which was worth this, into an account that would start using, and it would cost him money to do that. And it's great, because what happens now, look, just imagine, 100 years ago, we're all walking around, we've all got horses and all that, and I come into here and go, you know what, chaps, all of you are going to give me your money, and I'm going to charge you for it. You'd rub me out of town, wouldn't you? Right? You'd rub me. Who is this black geezer?
Cancer. No.
Charging me to look after me money.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I can look after it myself. But that's what they do now.
Aye.
Do you know what I mean?
And this is crypto. We're going into the crypto world now, aren't we? The blockchain.
Well, that's another thing that it's a funny one as well.
Aye. Well, I mean, if you think of
But you know what,
crypto,
chaps? That
we
is
better-
a subject
aye.
for another day.
Aye,
and
that's it, yeah.
You've been listening to the Gritty Nitty. I think it's episode 6, could be episode 5, could be episode 4. Who knows how Steve's going to cut it up. And we've been talking about the pandemic, and we'll see you all next time.
Over and out.
Over and
Bless
out.
you.
Take care.
Whoa!
Well done.
Right, okay. So that's great, man. Thank
Okay,
you.
it's great.
Good content.
Got quite a good bit of content.
Yeah, and
No,
then
it's enjoyable as well.
Aye.
It's when you don't get into